Okay, so you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
Or, so if you have any difficulty in audio, and if you're not able to see my screen, let me know. And you can unmute yourself if you have any questions. You don't have to wait till the end of the session. You can raise questions immediately. All right, so yesterday we completed dynamic type up to the, okay, so we have completed up to here. So we need to discuss data types. These are all the data types that Python supports. When I say Python, it is core Python. Basically, there are multiple modules or libraries that it supports, right? So basically, not to have a segregation between core Python and the libraries, I call Python as core Python. So what we are discussing right now is core Python. Of course, some exception that math library that we discussed yesterday, it's a module or library. But typically it's Python, the core Python, and then the modules. So we initially started with Python basics, and then we'll get into mathematics and statistics, which is a prerequisite for machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI. And then we'll get into machine learning part, and then deep learning, and then generative AI. That is how the flow is going to be, right? So right now we are in this phase now. When I say core Python basics, it's core Python basics. There are various data types that Python supports, like bool, which stands for boolean, int stands for integer, float is nothing but decimal values, complex number, usually it's going to be in x plus y I form, right? In mathematics, this is how it typically going to be, y I, maybe like this. In Python, it is y plus, yj. It is not I. For some reason, they named it as j. And I stands for basically imaginary number, so it's a complex number format. String, as you know, whether it is single character or a word, let's take answer, a word or even a sentence. Even a sentence or a paragraph or a document or a corpus, the whole thing will come under strings. So when I say single character, it could be C or B, whatever, or it can be a word like mission, right? Or it can be a sentence. Usually, a set of characters, we call it as word, right? Set of words, usually it could be a phrase or sentence. A group of sentences usually form a paragraph. A group of paragraphs, we call it as a document. A group of documents, we call it as corpus, right? So whenever we speak about generative AI, so we usually use this term corpus or documents. Let me show you a practical example of how these documents or the whole corpus looks like. Uh, Look at this example. This is a tabular representation of the corpus. Look at this. Each row is a document. It has a bunch of documents, right? How many documents it has? I think it has somewhere around 404. So it has 404 documents. This whole review column will be called as corpus. Okay. Let me copy this in chat. Please mute yourself unless you have questions. Thank you. Jagan?
Hi, sir.
Yeah. Hi, Jagan. So if you don't have any questions, please be on mute. For questions, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you. All right, we'll get back to this. So everything being usually considered string itself. But when it comes to tabular representation, if we look for DF data types, let me execute this once. Python environment, maybe I'll go with base. If you look at this review column being shown as object. So this whole column, wherein each row, even the data type is string, the whole column we call as an object. Okay, don't get confused with string and object. And then a list, usually a variable will have a single value, right? X equal to X. Whereas what if you want to have a bunch of values together or related values? So here, Y is a list wherein it's not just one value. Of course, you can have one specific value, only one value in it, like this. But usually a built-in data structure like list can have more than one value. Similarly, we have other built-in data structures like dictionary, tuples, and sets. We'll see an example each, but we'll get into the deep dive into list, dictionary, tuples, and sets later. For now, I'll give an example on how we usually define each of these data types. And then we have a separate module for list. You can see that this whole thing focuses on lists. The same way, we have an entire set of thing on dictionary, and here we have sets and tuples. Let's get back to data types. Bold, right? Like usually it can be a true or false. And Python, by the way, it's case sensitive. So it's false is not same as that of false. This is the actual way to write a Boolean value. So let me, if we check type, it is bool. Boolean, bool stands for Boolean. Same way we can have false also. Suppose if I have 5 or any integer, represent with int. Right? As long as it doesn't have the decimal value. So if it has decimal value, then it will consider as float. Complex number, as I told you, that it's going to be in the form of x plus yj, not I. Don't get confused with the standard notation in mathematics compared to what we have it in Python. In mathematics, it is x plus y. Sorry, it will usually be in a plus ib form kind of. Whereas here it is a plus jb. Let me give a simple example. 2 plus 3j. That's complex number. Right? Even without this part, it still be considered complex number because internally it assumes that it is something like this. You can even write like this. Right? But don't skip this part and assume that it's going to be complex. It will be considered as integer, or depends on what kind of value that you provide. That's just a simple example. 2 plus 3j is not same as the top. You can see that in Python, even though it's case sensitive, capital J also being accepted, but usually it's small letter is preferred. String can be wrapped it in single or double quotes. There's not much difference, but there's subtle difference between using single quotes, double quotes. We'll see that later. But for now, either it is single quotes or double quotes into consider as string. It's not just word, it can be even a whole sentence or corpus is still going to be considered string. A list is usually going to be wrapped it in square brackets and it can have a bunch of values in it. This is list. And it can have any kind of data type. It not just to be integers. It can be a mix of all. It's still a list because it accepts any kind of data type. Dictionary is a bit different, like kind of JSON, wherein it's going to be in the form of key val pairings. For example, 0, 1, 2. This whole thing is dictionary, right? How do we refer the values? Those details will get into that later. So as I told you that we have a separate section for dictionaries. Here, my motive is to define and show you the data type. That's all. And tuple is basically wrapped it in round brackets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is tuple or otherwise pronounced it as tuple. Both are fine. Right now, you may not find much difference between a list and tuple, but don't worry about it. We'll see that later. And set is again going to be in curly brackets, but it's not a key val combination kind of like, in dictionary, usually it's going to be key val, right? Whereas here, usually it's going to be set of values, set. There are some of the data types that Python supports, right? Any questions on this?
No. So
Okay, we'll
only
move-
these are the data types we are using, or some other data types are available, sir?
Yes, we can have user defined ones, but not to go to that extent because we have various library. Pydantic. Once we get into Pydantic, you will understand how we can create such data types.
Okay.
For now, this is good enough.
Okay. Right, sir.
And once we start generative AI, I will take a session on Pydantic. Pydantic is a very important library wherein
Okay,
it
sir.
provides type safety also. Wherein the core Python by default doesn't provide any type safety,
Okay.
which may be essential for production grade projects.
Okay, sir.
Those who are from Java background, so don't worry about type safety. We'll see that later. And typecasting is converting from one data type to another data type, irrespective of what the programming language is. If you want to convert from one data type to another data type, we usually use this term typecasting. Suppose if I have 5.2, what is the data type of this? Type is the function that we use to find out the data type of variable, and it is float. Suppose if you want to convert to integer, you can use int. The same way we have float, string, kind of. So here I can convert this integer. You can see that it has been stripped out. The decimal part being stripped out, and we got only 5. But will the value of x will get changed? No, unless after the conversion you have to assign it back. Only then the value will persist. Otherwise, you're just converting it. It's going to print out on the screen, but it doesn't really reflect the, it doesn't persist the value. So it's still going to be the original value unless you assign it back, right? So if it is an integer, you can still convert into float. Sorry, float. You can see that it has been shown as 5.0. You can even convert to string as long as it makes sense. It's basically, a string. You can take any data type and you can convert into string. For example, 2 plus 3j, complex number. You can still, sorry, it is 2 plus 3j. still be converted into string. So you can convert, in fact, any kind of data type to string. But the one thing is that make sure that it is compatible. Suppose if I have a string and my intention is to convert to integer, it doesn't make any sense. Obviously, it throws an error, invalid literal for int with base 10 mission. Doesn't make sense. But it makes sense in generative AI. Suppose, what is generative? So I'm going to take some sample text. Maybe this is much better. And I'm going to go to TikTok Tokenizer, which is an app that helps us to convert the text into tokens. So you can see the tokens. This is GPT-4o. GPT-4o is basically a model from OpenAI. There are various providers, various list of models given here. You can see we have DeepSeek models, Google models, Microsoft Pi 2. So we have Llama models, which is from Meta, that is Facebook, and Quen. We have many models. Basically, each word, you can see that it is being converted into a number. In fact, we will have a detailed discussion on why we need to convert strings to numbers. Let me show you that. If you look at this text, we have converted that into zeros and ones, and then we convert it into these numbers, I mean to say in byte form, using byte peer algorithm or any other alternative, similar alternative. And then we convert in tokens. We'll see this whole process of how to convert strings to numbers and why we, after all, need to convert to tokens. And then embeddings. You might have heard this word, embeddings, right? These are embeddings. There's a whole embedding for this word. So why we need to convert those to embeddings? But for now, as we are focusing on core Python, it doesn't make any sense in converting string to numbers. So obviously it throws an error, invalid literal for int with base 10 mission. Okay. The same case for, okay, we have seen into float and float int, right? So this is how a typecasting was. Any questions on typecasting? I hope this is clear. So next one, we have string. Okay, let's take string here, machine learning. Internally, so internally, this whole string is mapped with indices. You can see the first character. Python indices starts from 0. You can see 0. The first character of the string, this is a string, right? The type is string. The first character of a string will shown with 0. Suppose if you want to fetch only m, then you have to use square bracket and then mention the index. You can see you got only m. Let's take a pointed by the index 1, right? So if we use 1, we get only a. You can get list of range of characters also. For example, let's take I need MAC. So 0, 1, 2. This is the start, right? And this is the end. This start and this then I need MAC. Then you need to mention start index and end index. So what is start index? 0. And the end index is 2. But the problem is that even if I execute it, I don't get MAC. I got only MA, even though we have clearly mentioned 2. The reason why it's been, cut off to, I mean, stripped out only to these characters is the outer bound is not going to get included. So when we say mention 2, it's internally it's going to consist 2 minus 1. So in order to get 2, we need to add plus 1. That is, we need to mention 3. Then it will fetch all these characters. You can see MAC. The outer bound is not going to get included, right? So if you want to get range of characters, this is how typically it works. So start and end index, but the end index outer bound, we call it as outer bound, and this is an inner bound. The outer bound by nature is not inclusive. So it's if you mention n, it's going to internally it's going to be considered n minus 1. So in order to get n, we need to add plus 1. So that's the reason we add 1. So we got 3 and we got up to 2. One more thing here is that when we mention 0, that is basically start index, right? The first index. Even if you skip it, by default, it assumes that it starts from 0. So it doesn't make any difference between this one. There's no difference between this one and this one. The reason is that internally it assumes that it is 0, even if you skip it. Suppose same case for the N1 also. Usually, in order to get up to G, what do we do? So 15, my outer bound is not going to get included. It's 15 plus 1. That is 16. So we get up to G, last character. If you skip it, then it automatically assumes that it has to fetch till the end. It is G. Understanding indexing is very essential, especially handling data and writing logic on top of it. So any questions on this part? One more thing is that even space is a character. So if you look at this index for space, it's 7, right? If I mention 7, of course, even this is going to be considered as a character. Suppose if I add one more, let me show you with better example. So let me get back to the original string. If I use len gives the number of characters in the string. If you look at this, it's 16. 0, sorry, it is length. We are trying to check the number of characters, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. This reason we got 16. So let me add one more space. You can see there are 2 spaces here. The length got changed from 16 to 17. It got to 20. So in space will be considered as a character. And what else we have? We know how to fetch it. And there is one more thing that I missed, so that is step. If you don't mention anything, then it automatically assumes that it is the right from start till the end, right? There's one more thing here, that is step. By default, it is 1. So there is no difference between this one and this one. Because by default, it fetches every character. That is what 1 stands for here. Suppose if I mention 2 here, see, it fetches every alternate character. When I say alternate character, it fetches M. And then what is the second character for M? It is C. What is second character for C? It is I. What is second character for I? It is E. What is second character for E? It is L, because there is space in between, right? 1, 2. What is second character for L? It is A, and so on and so forth. You can see M, C, I, E, L, A, N, N. Got it? Same case for 3 also. So let's take, then what kind of output we get? Can someone guess from this? So here we have, right? Let me show you here. Yeah. So why we got MHEENG? When we mentioned 3, first character, of course, it fetches M. And where did we get this H? is 1, 2, and 3. So basically it means from M, the third character is H. And from H, it is third character is E. From E, third character is E again. So that's the reason we got E, double E. And for E, the third character is N. For N, third character is G. And we don't have anything else. So it got stopped right there. One more interesting is that we can have negative indexing also. If I mention -1, it prints from the reverse order. So, sorry. Look at this, MACHINE, machine space learning, right? And if you mention 2, from reverse order, it fetches every second character. So G, and then I, and then R, and so on and so forth. Usually don't, -1, maybe we typically use it to get it in reverse order. That is one use case where we use step. Or you always better to prefer positive index. There's another case where we use negative indexing is, so if you look at this is positive indexing. Negative indexing is from reverse order, it is -1, -2, -3, -4, -1, and so on and so forth. So in order to get G, it's not just 15. We can even use -1. Let me show you this. So X, 15 gives G, right? Alternatively, we can even mention negative indexing. We typically use negative indexing only to fetch the last character, last but one character. In the case of positive indexing, in most of the cases, 99.99% case, use positive index, don't use negative index. Not to fetch last character, last but one character. So what we usually do is, it's difficult to figure it out, the positive index. We need to count the characters and then find out what is the index of it. Whereas typically, it's best practice to use -1 or -2 to get the last character or last but one character. That is when you have to use negative indexing. The other use case is in order to flip the string, reverse order. Other than that, don't use negative indexing. Always use positive indices. Okay. Any questions? And by the way, it could be wrapped it in single bracket, single quotes or double quotes. Doesn't matter. Whether single quotes or double quotes, but don't mix both. Single quote, double quote doesn't make any difference. But if you mix, let's say that here you have double quote and here you have single quote, obviously throws an error. Any questions on the way indices works in strings? And especially negative indexing. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Yesterday we discussed about this, right? So can someone recollect what we discussed about this truthy case and falsy case? Specifically mentioned about 0, none, false. What else? Blank. Blank would be a blank string, a blank list, a blank tuple, a blank dictionary. So all these cases will be considered as falsy cases. Whereas the remaining and all is going to be considered as truthy. Why it matters? When you write an if condition or while condition, wherever we pass the condition, and the block of statements depends on the condition validation, then it matters. So every program language, it may change a bit. I mean to say, so for negative numbers in certain program language, it could be considered as a negative. I mean to say false cases. We usually use comparison operators in condition operator, but in sometimes a mathematical expression can also be passed as a condition. In such case, this matters a lot, right? So here we have a complete list of it. You can take it as reference, not to mug it up, but remember these 4 things: 0, 9, none, false, or blank. When you write a condition, and it could be if, while, or whatever, make sure that it obeys these rules. Otherwise, it may give you an unexpected result. right? Here, any questions? All right, so here we have few examples wherein it's a blank, so it completely skipped this block. Exclude only this part because it does not come under this if block. Now don't worry if you don't understand the if block structure, we'll see that later. I think here it is. So here we will have a detailed discussion on if block. My intention is to explain when it's going to be considered as truthy case and when it's going to be considered as falsy case. The next one is there are certain things that we need to discuss about strings. So let's suppose, as I told you that it can be wrapped in single quote or double quote, right? But so let's say that you want to use of a single quote in between. It's absolutely acceptable. But as I said earlier, single quote or double quote is acceptable. But in this case, what happens? It's going to throw an error. So suppose if you write some code, in fact, any programming language, especially in Python, Python is an interpreter language. The code, basically, it is going to pass to interpreter, Python interpreter, or simply call it as engine, right? So it's going to check, it's going to process it, and then it's going to give some output. The problem here is that we got an error because it's the start of the string. I'd consider this as an end of the string, and immediately after that, it should not follow with some other string. So that is why we got this unterminated string literal. But here my intention is to give an apostrophe s that it is not machine learning, it's machine's learning. In such case, what we can do is we can use escape character. What escape character does is we are explicitly saying that to the interpreter or engine, Python engine, the next character followed by this escape character should not interpret the same way as that usually engine does. Ignore it and present it as it is. So if I do this, if I check now X, you can see that it has been simply been shown up. It is not interpreted the usual way. It's going to be shown as it is. This escape character is an instruction to the engine saying that next character, whatever it encodes, special character usually it's going to be need to be shown as it is. No interpretation required. And then if you use escape character, it doesn't matter whether you wrap it in single quotes or double quotes. It still works. Suppose if I have another double quote in between, if I use escape character prior, you can see that still it's going to present it well. But of course, it may not print well, so you need to use print explicitly. Now it has been shown up very well. By default, if you mention X, it uses the internal print function of Jupyter Notebook, the IDE one. So print is the right way to print a variable, so whatever the content that you want to display. It will interpret in a right manner. Otherwise, if you rely on the built-in print function of the IDE, you may not get the expected output. Right? Is this clear? Any questions? The next one is I'm going to take a string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here the values, the elements, the values are, I mean to say, these words being separated by comma. Suppose if I want this as a list of words, like this, automatically rather than manually, We can use split method. X, the X is the variable. To check type, it is string. Right? We can use split method. Split method has a separator. We need to explicitly mention the separator. By default, how do we get the documentation? We need to place cursor in between round brackets. Anywhere in between round brackets. Shift tab. Shift tab will give the documentation of it. Let's explain what this function does. Sometimes it's going to be an elaborate explanation. Sometimes it's going to be very short. It may not give enough information. If it doesn't give enough information, again, you need to rely on Google or any other alternative. So in this case, if you look at this, by default, it is based on space. So if it is a separator, the separator is space, then you not explicitly mention the separator. Whereas in other cases, you always better, you always have to have the separator. You can say comma. I'm saying explicitly saying that split it based on comma. Suppose if I have space here, that is how a typical sentence formation going to be, right? The whole thing we consider as one string itself because it is I provided a wrong separator. If I provide space, it works well. Even if I don't provide separator, by default, the split method works on white space as separator, right? So it still works. You can see that, but it's always recommended to use like this because it improves readability. Even those who are new to Python or non-Python programmer can easily understand what this logic is all about. Otherwise, they, it's an assumption that they may know about this function. Right? Is this clear? Method. There are more advanced methods also, like using RE library. We can provide multiple separators at once. So we'll see that later in regular expression session. So in generative AI, one of the topics that we will discuss is regular expressions. In order to clean the text data, so the data that we get, especially text data, mostly predominantly comes from where? So through web scraping from various websites. It's not going to be clean. We should not assume that it's going to be clean. So we need to clean it manually. In such case, if you look at this particular project, here we cleaned it. So we have removed all the non-alphabets and space. So any number, special characters will get removed. So any HTML tags will get removed right here. Right? Any stop words, so it will remove here. So don't worry about what is stop words and how to write this logic. So we'll see that later. The point here is that the text data predominantly comes from web scraping or unreliable source, where data is no 99.99% case it's going to be dirty, and we need to have our own mechanism to clean it. That is when there's going to be useful the regular expressions or these sort of methods, right? We move on to the next topic. So I'll explain this, and tomorrow we'll take up a list. So I'll stop right here after completing this. So strip, for example, let's take that I have a string. Here, if you look at this, it has trial spaces. Any trial space means any space at the start or at the end. Usually, we will have this sort of trial spaces when we because we read it from external sources. So we don't know, in what kind of mechanism they implemented in entering the data. So sometimes they enter in an inappropriate manner. In such case, we don't expect that everything is going to be clean. It may have trial space like this. So we need to strip out those trial spaces. So we can use a method called strip. Execute strip, it's going to strip out any trial space. It doesn't matter how many, it's going to strip out. We have other special methods on strip itself. L strip. Strip means only the left part will get stripped out, and R strip only the right part will get stripped out. You can see the right part stripped out, left part as it is. but strip is the best way to go for it. But thing is that, as I told you, that it's going to strip out only the child space. Any space in between, it will not be considered. You can see that still it retains the same spaces. Then we have to have specialized function or some logic implementation on our own to remove those spaces. We'll see that later. So for now, I mean, any questions on split and strip methods? I hope this is clear.
Yeah, strip means like only it will remove the spaces before the quotation.
Exactly. So be at the start of the string or at the end of the string, not in between.
Okay. Okay.
So let's take that as I told you that we can have our own customized solution, right? So in this case, can we write like this? By default, it is space, right? Let me execute this one again. Split. If I go with 0, that's how it works. Split. By default, it has stripped out. I don't have any issues. Sometimes it may not work appropriately. So we need to explicitly write the logic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It worked. It's stripped out well. So it's based on space, right? It has taken only this one as one character, another one as another character. Split. Otherwise, again, we need to loop it and write an if logic, and then we need to have an if condition saying that anything that is not space, and then basically we write some for loop, and then if condition not equal to space, and then write some logic. We can have our own customized solution, but here in this case, it worked well. No, it doesn't include those spaces. And then we can combine this one. So by the way, space join, there is a method called join, wherein we can join it back. Now you can see it doesn't matter how many space we have, it still works. Split is a way to split a string to a list of words or values. Whereas join is joining back. And this is a separator. Here the separator space. We can have even comma. To mention comma, obviously the operator is going to be comma. But usually a sentence, a word is separated by what? Space, isn't it? If you look at this, the word is separated by space. Clear? The next one is string concatenation. Let's take, I have two strings here. Y equals learning. We can use plus in between strings, which is, you may feel a bit odd, especially if you are from C++ or whatever, or Java. Because we need to write a customized solution, or maybe you will have some specialized functions for it, methods for it. Thus here, by nature, it works. It combines those strings. Unless you add some number and a string, then it may not work. Again, you need to convert this number into a string, and then you can join it back. We call this as concatenation. It recognizes that it is a string, and it concatenates. If you add space in between, it's not just limited to 2, it can be expanded to any number. So if you want to add space, what I can do is this. I can add it. I can store it in another variable, z or something. Right? That is string concatenation. Okay. And let's take this next one is strings are immutable. What do I mean by immutable? Immutable means something that I cannot change. Overwriting is different, and changing a particular character, a set of characters is different. Let's say that I want to fetch C. What is the index of it? 0, 1, 2, right? Machine 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So C, the index is 2. So here it is C. Suppose if I change it to capital C, Unit throws an error, string object does not support item assignment. So whenever you see this error message, you need to remember this, but you'll get habituated in remembering this. String object does not support item assignment means it's immutable. Or even it applies to, let's take a range of characters. It is immutable, we cannot change, but we can overwrite it. Here we have X's machine, right? Let's take that I want to change it to overwrite to learning. We can overwrite it in Python with quite ease. But we cannot change a character set of characters. But that is immutable nature of strings. So tomorrow we will take up this and we'll discuss in detail. So any questions in today's session? Or if you have any difficulty in installing or opening up Jupyter notebooks or while trying things in Jupyter notebook, you can speak out now.
Hi, Damodar.
Yeah,
Sudarshan
Sudarshan.
here. Yeah, could you please paste that link again for that, what Jupyter related link you
Right.
posted, right?
It's not Python scripts, right? Yes.
Yeah, Python script. Yeah, first day one.
All right. So so here somewhere. All right. Let me stop screen for. I will stop the screen for a while. So yes.
Yeah.
Let's wait for that. All right. Here it is.
Thanks, Damodar.
Yeah. Those who already enrolled to the course, it is very much available in Google Classroom. You can access right away from there. So you need to click on classwork, and then any file that you want to open, right click on it, open link in new tab, and left in menu you can see download option. You can download from there. But if you click straight away from here without right clicking on it and open it in new tab, you're not going to see any download option as such. Again, you need to go here, open new tab, and then go to file download, or you can see top left, you can see download options. You can click on download and download those zip files or any sort of files. It's not just applied to zip. You have various other files also here, right? Installation guides. Anaconda. So Google Classroom, this document has those instructions on how to open the file, how to log in. So you need to use Google Chrome and you need to log in with the same email ID that you shared to us. So only that specific email ID will have access to. So you should not use any other email ID. Once you log in, you can download this. And you have a whole set of instructions in the same document. Go through it if you have difficulty, but all the material will be available under classwork. So click on classwork tab. Yeah, any questions? If you don't have any questions, you can log off. We'll meet tomorrow at the same time. We'll start the session sharply at 8 o'clock. So today we waited for almost 5 to 6 minutes, right? So you don't wait for that long for upcoming sessions. So you need to join sharply at 8 o'clock with the same link. Thank you. Any
Okay,
change
thank
in the link? Yeah, any change in the link will be updated in the group. Yeah, go ahead. Someone saying something. Go ahead. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.